Okay, here's the other big fight that's coming up. Republicans are now calling on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to pull the plug to stop new legislation that is now backed by 220 House Democrats that would stop President Trump from being able to issue travel bans like the temporary one he announced on Europe last night. With me now, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, he is James Carafano. Great to see you, sir.
Hey, good to be with you.
Your reaction to this?
Well, you know, when the president said this, I as a guy that's worked on these issues for years, I kind of say what? And I had to think about it. It would have been nice to get a Reagan-esque speech about, let me explain this. But when I unpacked it, I said, why this makes perfect sense. Look, here's what happened. Why we have delayed getting here is because we really restricted travel from China. Two places they didn't do that. Iran, where literally everybody's dying, and several European countries, particularly Italy, which has a large Chinese migrant population, which all came home after the Chinese New Year and brought the disease with it. Because they're part of the Schengen, essentially all of Europe is now the second wave of contagion that could potentially come to the United States.
You mean the open borders system
yes,
in Europe? Yeah.
That's right. So that's why this makes it exactly right. So the analogy I use is you cannot drain the bathtub if you leave the faucet on. If we're going through this massive social distancing to try to break the spread of COVID-19 here, it makes no sense to be importing new cases of people who are infected. That's it. It's just that simple.
You know, the Democrats' legislation would still let Chinese travelers fly into the U.S. from Wuhan, also travelers from Italy into the United States. You know, the president's restrictions do apply to Europe's 26 countries in the open border Shenzhen zone. But I want to show again the 20 countries around the world now doing travel bans. I know this is a fast scroll. Right. It's going to go fast. Here it goes. 6 of those countries are in Europe. Italy has a travel ban. So does Greece. You're going to see Czech Republic. India is now limiting visas. China, Colonel, is now saying, stop. We're not going to allow, or we're going to quarantine international travel into China. Your reaction? And by the way, Germany is saying 70% of its population could be infected. Go ahead.
So if you look at two places that really kind of nipped this, got control of this, Hong Kong and Taiwan, both of which really paid attention to Chinese visitors coming in. South Korea did not. South Korea is in a completely different case. So this just makes sense. We are coming to the end of flu season. We have a couple of weeks. If we're going to stop the spread of this, it's really going to be social distancing here. So the travel ban is a necessary but not sufficient, but it's necessary because we don't want to just be throwing more fuel on the fire. For Congress to do this now literally would be, in a sense, being the arsonist, at the forest fire. It would just be the worst thing they could possibly do.
We've got New York State saying no to gatherings of 500 or more. Broadway is going dark. Madison Square Garden here in New York City is saying no, it is shutting down. The Center for Disease Control's director, the director of that, he testified to House Oversight that the real threat to the United States right now is travel from Europe. He's saying Europe, where cases are exploding, 22,000 cases there. He is bluntly saying, quote, Europe is now the new China. Watch this.
Clearly, China is got control of their outbreak. They had 20 cases in the last 24 hours. Where our real threat right now is Europe. That's where the cases are coming in for. So in a way, if you want to just be blunt, Europe is the new China.
We, as you know, within weeks of identifying the outbreak, the restriction of travel from China reduced travel by 90%. I think that was a very helpful move to prevent more cases from China coming into the United States.
But we've got Democrat Senators Christopher Murphy, Christopher Coons, Dianne Feinstein, Richard Blumenthal. They're trying to also, they're maybe moving on board to stop the president's travel ban there and also to stop the president's extension of the travel ban from immigration from places like Eritrea, terrorist hotspots, and other issues. Your reaction to this?
They're just wrong. Look at the sacrifices America making on their own, not because the federal government said so, but because we want to stop this disease. We aren't going to hockey games. We aren't having basketball games. We're not going to school. We're not going to universities. We're not having family reunions. We are sacrificing as a nation because we have decided we want to stop this thing in its tracks. And what they want to do is just bring more disease in so it's harder to do. It makes no sense.
Well, why are they doing it then? What's the point?
Sadly, I think my common assessment is it's just been partisan carping since the beginning. I listened after the president's speech, and all the commentary was partisan squabbling. There was no objective analysis.
Colonel Carafano, come back soon. Great to see you, my friend.